Welcome to the latest edition of First Day Cop Bites podcast. It is Monday, February 1st. We're into the second month already. The day after Liverpool beat West Ham United 3-1 at whatever that stadium's called, the soulless place that probably is not much different when it has no fans to when it's full of people. Wonderful victory that came hard on the heels.
People.
People came hard on the heels of a 3-1 over Tottenham Hotspur last Thursday. It is, and perhaps this is the most significant thing for anyone who's listening or watching, it is transfer deadline day, the close of the day, and we're going to talk about one definite Liverpool acquisition and one possible Liverpool acquisition before we're finished. Welcome to Daz and to Sean joining me today. Good to see you both. We didn't record right after the West Ham game, but that's given us kind of even more to talk about in terms of signings and where we might ever see these people play. We'll get to that. But let's start with yesterday in West Ham. 3-1. Looked pretty comprehensive victory. Well, I'll go to Sean first. What did you learn yesterday from that performance?
What did I learn? I don't know. We looked a lot better. We looked better at Spurs, and then yesterday, I thought we kind of continued. I mean, I don't, it sounds odd to say, but to me, at least, like I think yesterday was maybe the most satisfying win of the season. Is that a stretch? I don't know. It just felt great. We looked great. We looked like ourselves. We're scoring great goals. We dominated. It's a shame we gave up the one goal because 3-0 would have been a more appropriate final score, I thought. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot. Like, I thought Nat Phillips had a great game. I think Henderson looks surprisingly good playing that left side center back role recently. One of my biggest takeaways, I think, was that why haven't we been playing Ginny in the 6 for so long? Ginny has been awesome in the 6 the last 2 games for me, and I think that's the thing that maybe if we had tried it earlier, kind of helped solve a lot of our issues, because we were able to push Thiago and the other midfielders further forward. Things were just kind of coming together. I think just about everybody had a great game yesterday, with the exception of maybe one player, which I won't name. But I think you guys know what I'm talking about. No, it was a very satisfying win. It just, kind of was very uplifting for me, at least. So had some doubts after the Spurs game, and, are we going to continue to play like this? And, at least it looks like we can after yesterday's game.
So I did have the chance, which I don't usually before we do these things, to listen to kind of some of the Anfield Wraps conversation yesterday. Well, I guess the conversation about yesterday, and they said a couple of things which I thought we'll kind of weave in here. One was they didn't seem so high on the performance, especially in the first half, and they weren't very high on the performance, I have to say, in the first half at Spurs either. But they did say, Divock Origi, who I'm thinking you're referring to, did what the manager asked of him, which is keeping people occupied, and that created the opportunities in the second half, while he was kind of because first of all, he's 6'3", so he's at least a nuisance value to most defenders. So let's talk about him. But they took a very different view, I think, which was that his discipline was a factor in the win, without necessarily going down the Divock route. What did you learn from yesterday, Daz?
Apparently, Shaqiri's balls, well, his passes, not necessarily his balls, defy physics. When he put that first-time ball over the top, I'm calling it the splutioning now, because I thought that's going to end up on a motorway somewhere, and it just dropped out of the sky like it was magnetized to his boot. To take nothing away from the way that Mo brought it down and then similarly dispatched it. Just what he did with that ball. And I think that Ben Johnson, also from the Anfield Wrap, said is like he just ballooned that. He's like he just twatted it out of the park, and there it is, right on his foot. I thought of everyone was crowing about the way that Mo pulled it down and put it away, as they should. But I was just like, that ball was incredible, because 99.9% of other players take a touch there, go to the byline and cut that back. And at which point, if you go back and look at it, there's someone almost gets back to get a boot on that as Shaq pulls it down. So it's, if he had have taken that touch, there's every chance that opportunity never happens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved Shaqiri's energy yesterday. I think we talked about this yesterday, Paul. I don't think he's ever going to win a Defender of the Year award, because, right. And then there was that full Rubik's Cube body slam that he put on. Who was it?
Bowen,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, well, you get in the way of someone throwing a Rubik's Cube at you. That's what you're going to fucking get.
You forgot to slow down.
Yeah. He just uses his crash pad. So I was very heartened by that from Shaqiri, because again, like you talked about, and I'll parallel it with Divock. You're asking Divock to do something that he doesn't necessarily like to do, and it's be busy. I remember I watched him at the Wolves game at the end of 2 seasons ago now, in the last game against Wolves, where everything was on it for us in City, and I was sitting at the top of the Kop, actually with your lads, and what I took away from that is like, good Lord, he doesn't like to run a lot. Yeah. Like I guess the best way of putting it is he has a paucity of movement. He's very economical in the way that he moves around the pitch. At least what I saw when I watched him play. And yesterday he put it in. He did put in a shift, and I'll give him that. I just think that it's a cumulative effect, because we expect less and less from him in every game now. It just kind of ties into that narrative that he's not one for us, and maybe it is time for him to move on. But another thing I took away from that is Klopp definitely knows what he's talking about. I think you and I talked about this yesterday. I think that his plan was always, I was nonplussed as to why Bobby didn't start. We all talk about how he needs rhythm, how he needs to play, and I thought he played very well. It was one of his best performances of the season against Spurs. I'm like, why didn't you keep that going? But I think in the long run, it made more sense to do exactly what you're talking about, is to try and soak up as much space in front of their grocks, try and wear them out through movement. We did ping the ball around a lot quicker yesterday than we have in the past, and we pulled them from pillar to post for a bit. Without being fairly toothless. So I can see where the Anfield rap is saying, like, the first half was kind of, we've had better. Yeah. But I think that might have been the kind of the rope-a-dope aspect of it. So it's good to see that Klopp does know what he's talking about. And the fact that it does hinge a lot on the way that we approach games. Because if you look at it, I kind of felt like we've gone back to more of that devil may care attitude. It's like, look, guys, you guys do what you do at the back. We're going to do what we usually do in the midfield, and just do what you can to stop them from scoring. And I think we've seen that in the Tottenham game and the West Ham game. We've reverted to more of that type. It was like, we're not going to coddle you guys in the center back positions anymore. If we go down one, we'll try and put 2 in. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a Klopp was talking about bravery, wasn't he? It's like being braver. Yeah.
He said several things actually, which are probably worth picking up on. Because apparently in the LFC TV interview, which I saw reported, I didn't see the interview. He talked almost as if he did not expect to have so much of the ball in the first half. That I think he expected West Ham to play like a team in 5th place in the league might play, as opposed to a David Moyes team in 5th place, which sounded a little bit deeper. I don't know if you saw him as well in the interview after the game. He said some really interesting things. Like, one is they asked him what he changed, and he said, well, we talked about a few things, but I'm not going to tell you what that is. So presumably they had talked about changing a few things in the way that they play. He also said that he felt like in the first half, they kind of confused themselves by having 2 number 10s. Shaqiri and Thiago, I'm thinking, and they kind of changed that in the second half so that they had people to pass to rather than being stood next to each other, which I don't recall happening that many times. But so many things to pick up on what you said. The Shaqiri pass, so that the whole movement for me was worth kind of spending more time thinking about.
Did you guys even have those little plastic balls when you were kids? When you tow it and and it'd corkscrew or to go in 45
Yeah.
different directions before it went straight again. Do you guys remember those? Like they were the red or yellow or blue, and they had like the lines, the black lines painted on them. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
When you hit that ball, that's exactly what I thought. It was like, Jesus Christ. It was like one of those things like, ooh.
So Klopp said he thought he had overhit him. And it just dropped right. And most sort of adjusted to it, and he did do really well, but it was a great pass. I saw some graphic that looked at the difficulty of both Trent's and Shaq's pass, and they were both like, something like only around 40% of the time those passes are completed or something like that.
It that high.
Yeah, it was something relatively low, but I should say, I should correct what I said. I guess I'm just thinking about how I came away from the game. I did it at halftime. I was thinking like, wow, it was a bit boring, but at the same time we had control of the game. So, but yeah, it was a very satisfying win at the end of the day. So,
well, I think that the Klopp might have been right had we not played as well as we did against Spurs. I think that Moyes might have shit himself a little bit. And he's like, oh God, these guys are back. They just did this to Spurs, and Spurs are no mugs. Yeah. And arguably their league position belies how good they actually can be at times. Mm-hmm. And he's like, they just twatted these guys on their own park. Like maybe I should reconsider what I'm going to be doing. So he might well have said like, look, let's try and play like the away team and try and beat them on the break.
Yeah. I mean, both teams, and we'll talk about Spurs, I know, but the tactics from the other managers in both games were weird to me. Like against Spurs, that was just, I don't know what Mourinho was thinking. That was just a bizarre lineup, and the way he went after that game was strange to me. It was very unlike him, and I don't know, the back three didn't really work, and we dominated the game. But in West Ham, it's almost like Moyes, I don't know if he's like afraid of playing us or something because of his time at Everton, because they set up so conservatively, and they don't normally play like that. I think maybe that helped us. I don't know. I think the biggest thing for me is I think the midfield just has worked much, much better the last two games. I mean, I think this is the best Milner's looked to me in years. I mean, he's been very good in both games, especially against Spurs. And getting Thiago further forward. Thiago's, he's not a 6, and I think putting Ginny in the 6 and allowing Thiago the freedom to kind of go forward has really helped the attack a lot in the last two games.
So a few things to pick up on there, Sean. I don't know if you saw the Moyes interview before the game. He was basically arguing with the interviewer about what chance they had. Because they were like, "Oh, you're right behind them. You got this number of points." He's like, "They're the champions. Like we're not going to finish anywhere near them." Which is an interesting strategy, right, for your team talk.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing I should say, if we move on, is how in the hell did Souček not get sent off? He was on a yellow and kicked Henderson right in the head. Yeah. Like, how is that not a card?
Yeah,
that was I couldn't believe that one. And I didn't feel like it got enough coverage. Like, if Henderson had been facing a different way, he could have kicked his teeth out. And Henderson's not a small guy. He's 6 foot. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Must be a secret Newcastle fan. Must be a Toon fan, quietly.
Well, I mean, maybe we can kind of wrap up the West Ham chat and go on to talk about Tottenham. But if you'd have told me, I think you did tell me, that we had Atkinson and Moss, our next two referees, I'd be like, oh, Phil.
How the heck is Moss passing a fitness test too? I want to know that. Looks like me running out there, and he's 50 years old.
I'm sure he's passed the test fine, Sean.
Just to talk to what Sean was saying about how managers set up, I think that Klopp has a lot of apartment space in other managers' heads that he doesn't pay for. And I think that sometimes they probably overthink what they need to do to beat him. And he's like, I'm just going to pretty much do what I always do. And you guys need to try and catch up. Because how many times has he beaten Mourinho? I don't think, has Mourinho beaten him as the Liverpool boss in the 52 other clubs that he's coached for since Klopp came in?
I'm not sure if Mourinho's ever beaten him. I don't know what the record is. Maybe he has, but
someone said it was part of the commentary mentioned it, and I was like, wow, it's like 12 times or something like that. And I don't think he's ever beaten him. So you could forgive Mourinho for thinking he's like, well, today might not be my day.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about. I mean, we can come back to some of the performances. I do think, by the way, the Salah second goal is a shout for goal of the season.
Yeah.
What my son was upset about was
this many
if
touches.
Trent hadn't taken 3 touches to make his pass, it would have been like a 5-touch goal. Like Robertson 1, 3 for Trent, 1 for Shaqiri, 2 for Salah. Yeah.
Another thing with that, just real quick. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with this hand game, but we don't want to take up too much time. But the third goal was like classic Bobby. I mean, that was just beautiful to see. That goal was. I mean, Ox did make the nice little flick, but Bobby just sort of saw that the whole way and set the whole thing up. That was just great.
Yeah.
Well, someone sped it up. There was like 35 passes, I think, in between. I was when I read something along those lines, and it just looked like one of those training ground exercises where the other team's already like 22 goals down. They're like, sod this. So they kind of sauntered across, made a half ditch effort to really put some pressure on, and we just like, man, goal. It was like watching a Benny Hill goal.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we were definitely helped by the fact that the 2 central midfield players couldn't miss a tackle after because they were both on cards. Mm. And I think I said to you yesterday there was one point, and I watched it back last night, where Rice looked, Jesus, what is this about? I was like kept running back and trying to, having no effect on the outcome of the game. One more thing on Firmino before we switch, definitely to talk about Tottenham. I believe he's in the red zone. That's what they said. That's why he wasn't playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so they determined he wasn't. Yeah, it wouldn't have been good for him to play the whole match. But he was pretty spectacular at Tottenham. So why don't we talk about that? Sean, I guess now we have a body of evidence that kind of something clicked back into gear, and I guess it might have started at United, but it certainly continued at Spurs, even if the Anfield Wrap story was that we weren't that great in the first half.
Yeah, so I actually watched most of that match back, and I agree. I don't agree with Anfield Wrap on Origi, but I'll let that go. But I do totally agree. Like yesterday's match, and I'd forgotten about this. At halftime, I think I said like a yawn, like it was like I was bored. We dominated the match in terms of possession, but we just weren't creating a whole lot. Spurs, when I watched it back, I think it was about, maybe the first 25, 30 minutes was really pretty even. It was more than I thought it was.
Yep.
They looked like they were going to, threaten here or there. But we kind of just grew into the game. And, again, I think it was just, for me, at least, the big difference in these last 2 games has been the midfield. The midfield's just worked a lot better, and I think all 3 in the midfield in the Spurs game were just outstanding. I thought Ginny was great in the 6. I thought I saw afterwards people were like critical of Thiago's performance. He had a couple of rash challenges, and people were like, "Oh, he's a red card waiting to happen," which I think is a bit of a stretch. But I actually thought Thiago had a very good game. He had a great influence on our front 3. To me, he and Milner were doing what we've really been missing a lot this season in terms of just being that link, getting forward, kind of connecting with the front 3. And yeah, I mean, Milner's game against Spurs was the best I've seen him play probably since our Champions League run. He was great. He was making the runs into the box. He was just super active. It was just kind of great. I mean, and I think we were a little bit fortunate in that, like when the game first started, Mane misses that chance, and you're like, oh, come on, not this again. And then they go down and they score, and then they actually called a VAR decision in our favor for once, right, with Son's arm being offside or whatever. So I think that, I don't know, maybe that was like a good sign early on, that we weren't at least going to get shafted in the game, even though I still don't think the officiating in either game was very good.
The shaft came out later on.
Yeah, so it was after we took control of the Spurs game and we were well ahead. That's when the real Atkinson came in, and we were just getting no calls, nothing. I mean, it was unbelievable. It started to get to one of those things where I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Somebody's going to get hurt here. And, we saw the game out. But yeah, it was a great performance. And I guess at the end of that game, I was like, well, we'll see when we play West Ham, I guess, for real, because it felt great to finally get a win, especially against Spurs. But they came out with that weird lineup. I don't think it was their best 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like, I don't know, we'll have to see. And then, so it was great to kind of see the next performance against Spurs, or against West Ham, where I thought we were even better in the second half. So
I think you may be onto something though about the mindset, because I think that's is it the 10th game now we played against them where we haven't lost. Like that last defeat was the Lovren pulled the 25 minutes or whatever it was game. So yeah. The one thing I would observe, and I may, because so I get my thoughts clear between the different matches. I started making notes during the Spurs game, and one of the things that I noted to myself was that Thiago hadn't been listening when everyone warned him about Atkinson, clearly, because he was trying to argue his case. And it's like, this is the guy who books Liverpool players for fun.
It's funny. Like it's every time he does something rash, he like explains to them like, oh no, you don't understand. I know more about this.
Right. Which is probably
I really wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to say about the game is that I think the Kane injury helped us out a lot. But to be fair, that came when he tried to pull his little dirty move against Henderson, where he if you looked at it, the ball was coming in and he looked back like he does, like he was going to undercut him.
Yeah.
And Henderson didn't fall for it. Henderson didn't go up for it. And Kane sort of went back to lean into him, and that's when he twisted his ankle or whatever he did. I think that helped us a lot because he really wasn't the same for the rest of the match. But,
So we can talk more about Kane, but I don't need to personally.
No.
I'd rather go back and talk about. I not only do I think Firmino had just an outstanding game, and when he came on yesterday, he showed some of the same touches, but I thought the one big difference for me was that Trent was looking much more to play risky passes than he has been in recent past. So I know kind of where you want to go in terms of observing about the Spurs game, but I do think it's worth a shout out, because there were a few times where he was under pressure, and the temptation has been, like over the last month, to knock the ball back to Alisson or maybe one of the central defenders, instead of which he was trying to fire it forward to Salah, who seemed always to be available.
Mm-hmm.
Daz,
go ahead, Daz. I was just going to say, it seems like to Daz's point earlier, it almost seems to me like they've been given, that liberty to push forward again and be more aggressive. But I don't know if that's the case. But Trent's definitely come back to life the last couple of games. He's looked great.
Yeah. Daz, you still with us?
I am. It's because we had the weather's kind of killing my my internet access. Is that better?
Yeah,
you're good.
It looked fine from our end.
Yeah, we got like kind of the Leroy Jenkins version of Trent back, who's willing to bomb on down the line and get involved, whereas we didn't seem to have that for a second. And I think that was primarily because it seemed like it was more instructed, like, please don't leave these guys by themselves for too long. We need to try and give them as much help as we can. And I think they unshackled him a little bit. And Robbo seems to be the one that is now. I wonder if Robbo isn't in the red zone. I know that we kind of expect him to go on and be Robbo and do Robbo things, but I wonder if he just looks a little jaded sometimes. I think he's not as crisp as he was. He doesn't go down the line as much as he used to. So I wonder if he's not. If he's not, he might need a little sit down. Maybe Tsimikas against Brighton. I realize that we need the points, but I wonder if like a little sit down for him wouldn't be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But against Spurs, it was just nice to see us to take a different mindset. And I think I said to Paul the other day it felt like that we needed to hit that bottom against Burnley And now, as a result, I think we're on our way back up. I just think that people said, the hell with this. Like, let's just be us again. And I think Klopp mentioned that, and in his press conference, and the Anfield Wrap talks about this all the time. I think it's Mo talks about how you can generally tell how Klopp feels about our chances, depending on his mood when he comes into press conferences.
Yeah.
And I think when he came into the press conference again for Spurs, he was very upbeat, and I think that for obvious reasons, like I think we look pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's interesting. Maybe we'll touch on this in the kind of acquisition of players, but I do wonder whether the realization that they were going to get some reinforcements in played a part in the kind of the slightly different, more kind of risk-taking mindset.
I think it definitely could have played a part in terms of the mentality of the team.
Yeah.
I was sort of I don't know, just throwing that idea out there. I think the last time we were on that, if you look at when our dip in form happened, it seemed to have come right after that meeting, whatever they talked about in that meeting right before the new year. And I was suspecting like maybe that's when Klopp told them that we're probably not bringing anybody in. And, you could understand how that would be a pretty big downer for all the players that really, fought their ass off to get to that point where we were top of the table at Christmas and the New Year. And then, to hear nobody's coming in, so that could, I think that very well could have played a part. We won't know until somebody's book comes out in a couple of years or whatever. But it does seem like the whole mentality has changed, over the last week or so. And you see it, especially like with Trent. I don't know if it's just a coincidence or what, but it just seems like everybody's just up for it again. So
there definitely is going to be a book if they win something this season. That's for sure.
Either way.
Yeah.
Crazy season.
So two great performances. Got Brighton coming up on Wednesday, and then City next Sunday. Let's talk about the new acquisitions. I don't know whether either of them will play a part in either of those games. And let's kind of pool our ignorance on what we know. First of all, as we're recording this, Ben Davies has signed. That's kind of out there. I think it's Liverpool website says it, so that's kind of as good as you can get. I'll start with what I read. Mark Lawrence's comments about him, saying that he didn't think he thought he'd be below Nat Phillips in the pecking order. So that's first thing to say. Any other insights, or is it just a question of like, hey, we have another centre back? Who cares how good he is at this point?
I don't know anything about him other than what I've read over the last day. It sounds like he's, from what I've seen, it's, he's quicker, more of a ball playing center back than Nat Phillips, but probably about at the same level overall. So maybe not quite as good in the air. I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen him play, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, we lost Daz.
Okay. Keep going. I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think I personally think that it's good to just get some players in there that can play center back. Yeah. Maybe against some of the bottom table teams, we can play Nat Phillips and Davies, or Nat Phillips and another center back, and push Henderson and Fabinho into the midfield, and see how we play against City. But yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful just to have some people in there that can sort of fill that void. Because what happens, what my worry was all along is sort of what ended up happening with Fabinho, when he gets hurt. Like, if you're thinking like, well, what happens if Fabinho gets hurt? Then we're in really bad shape. Well, fortunately for us, Henderson had already stepped into the left center back role, and we're like okay now. But we have Henderson and Nat Phillips, and like that's it. There's nobody else available. So that's not a good position to be in either. So even having that, if it's somebody's like Davies to rotate, I think that still is very important. We have so many games we have to play. You can't just count on, midfielders converted to center backs who are playing with injuries. We were just down to kind of dire circumstances there. So, and I don't know what the case is with Matip, but I've seen and read that he might be out for the rest of the season. So, we don't know that, but if the club knows that, then that could be another reason why they'd go out and do this.
Yeah.
So
we got Daz back. Good. So we're just talking about Ben Davies, and I guess we're pulling our ignorance really. The other thing I noticed is he's left-footed.
That's a pretty deep pool.
Well, I mean, it's like
drown an elephant in that.
How many tweets have you looked at regarding Ben Davies, the guy who doesn't play for Tottenham, right?
All of them.
Yeah.
Well, all three of them were available. So I did a little bit of listening, and so they had like the quote unquote experts in, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but I think that the consensus seems to be that he has a higher ceiling than everyone's willing to, that everyone seems to believe. Is like, oh, he's only 2 million. Why are we going for championship players? And then the obviously rejoinder was, well, you have Andy Robertson, Gini Wijnaldum were both on teams that were getting relegated.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little disingenuous because they did play at the highest level. So it wasn't like they were coming from a lower level to a higher level. They were at a higher level going down. But I think I get a good feeling about this kid. If he's a ball-playing centre-back, I remember Alan Hansen was similar to that. I remember, I think it's pretty well documented that he wasn't spectacular in the air either.
Yeah.
So it depends what you're looking for. I think if you could stitch the two center backs together, you'd probably have the perfect unit, like the perfect unison or unity of the type of player that we probably want. I think that they were looking at that. What's his name? Coletta Carr, the Croat.
Yeah.
And then there were what's his name? Carr something or other. Carmo. Yeah, from Braga.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing. So we definitely have a type. We want someone that can ping a diagonal ball, like a Virgil-esque ball over the top, a more ball-playing centre-back, and then pair them next to someone that is more like a Grok, that's willing to do more of the dirty work. From what I've seen about this Kabak is he's a bit rash. They say he's got shades of Lovren to him. But anyway, I guess we can get to him in a second. But Davies, from everything I've seen so far, they're saying like, on the upside of it, he has a higher ceiling than people are willing to give him. He's 25, which is kind of when you find anyone that's a centre back specifically is like it's kind of that golden age where they become the centre back that they I guess they blossom into the centre back that they're going to be. And from what I've read is like he does have a lot of chops, and oftentimes you never really get to see the best of someone unless they're paired with someone that's potentially better than they are, and it helps to raise their game. And he's working with one of the best coaches in the world, so I don't think anyone's going to go out and say like this is the dream move for us. It definitely is for him.
Yeah.
However, I think that we have a pretty good a couple of potentially pretty good young centre backs. And one thing I saw with this with Kabak was that because he's 20, he doesn't eat into our homegrown players, so we don't have to get rid of anybody because he's only 20.
Oh, okay. I did
so
not.
That's
yeah. So Ozan Kabak has played for, is it the worst defense in the Bundesliga for a year now? I can't confess I haven't seen a single Schalke game, but the numbers don't look great. But apparently Klopp's best friends, well, at least one of them says Wagner says that Kabak has a high ceiling. What do you know, Sean?
I mean, we were like with him last summer too, and the reporter I think he's in English, Chris Williams, but he reports on Bundesliga. Mm-hmm. He linked us to him last summer, saying that we had been talking to Schalke about a potential move. And yeah, I mean, the word on him is he's 20 years old. He's got immense potential. He's, one of the best in the world, apparently in the air. He's incredibly dominant in the air. I mean, the fact, I guess I'm not overly concerned about the fact that he plays on the Schalke defense, because Schalke are a complete disaster right now. So if he's surrounded by a bunch of, terrible players, I'm not going to fault him for that necessarily. And I don't know if that's the case, but especially as a 20-year-old, if you're on an awful team, it's sort of understandable that it's going to be frustrating. And And so now, we're potentially taking him off of that and throwing him into our team where he's potentially going to be playing next to Virgil van Dijk. So that's a totally different scenario.
Text notes, Nat Phillips.
I mean, if you pair him next to Virgil, it's like, it's hard. If he's as good in the air as they say, it's hard to believe that we'll ever lose a header in the box, which is kind of nice to think about. And I like the fact that he's so young and can kind of grow up, maybe be mentored by Virgil and hopefully become a great player. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm more high on him than I think most people are, just because he's recently been valued by a lot of people, just kind of in the market before last summer, even like close to 50 million pounds. So he's been very highly rated. And the fact that we might get him for 18 million, we got him on a loan so we can see if we want to get him. And then if we want to buy him in the summer, we can get him for 18 million. Thank you, Michael Edwards.
Yeah.
That's another amazing deal for him to pull out.
I'm guessing it must take Michael Edwards a time to find the photos, actually, I think, of whatever evil deed someone at Schalke has done. Because his price is halved and we don't necessarily, it just seems.
Did you see this tweet that I think it was Justin sent around from it's like KFC in the UK and Ireland, said Michael Edwards came in to buy a bucket of chicken, he'd leave with all our chicken for free and a couple of our fryers or something.
Secret recipe. Yeah.
Secret recipe and the shirt off our backs,
Yeah, so I guess money is a big piece of this Kabak thing, Daz. But I mean, in old money, certainly pre-pandemic, that doesn't sound like a lot for a centre back to kind of try him out and then see if he fits.
Well, I know that I'll try and drag one of the points that you had in your agenda in here, kicking and screaming, was about the Deloitte. Our evaluation, and we're only 20 million behind the highly leveraged bunch of red shite down the street.
Allegedly.
But I guess value doesn't necessarily attribute, I guess it can, to what you can afford to shell out in one of the worst potential financial crises for sporting teams or sporting organizations that's ever happened. At least for something where there's this much money involved in sports. So my thing is, like, you have a lot of your quote unquote top rhetoric happening on Twitter and amongst friends as well. It's like, well, why weren't they doing this on January 1st? You should have put, well, on January 1st, you wouldn't have pulled this Kabak thing over the line for what we're pulling it over the line with. Like, there has to be some sort of, I guess, brinkmanship is the best way of putting it. And you have a bunch of hedge funders in charge of what we do. Of course, they're going to be like, oh yeah, let's wait these suckers out. And like we walked away from Kabak, who was highly rated with a massive price tag. We put something down that we thought was feasible. It might have been nice considering where the world was with the finances, and they told us to get stuffed. So we did. We walked away, and now look at us now. So you can't have both. You can't say we should have done this on January 1st and say, well done with the way that you pulled this try before you buy loan fee that we just pulled off with Kabak, because it wasn't feasible. I don't think it was feasible on January 1st. On the other side of that is like, well, you are playing a massive game of chicken here, because what happens if this doesn't get over the line? And like, we are stuck with Nat Phillips and potentially Reece Williams when Jordan Henderson goes down with a head wound after being wellied in the head by a 6'27" grok. I think fair play to us in terms of kind of not blinking, but it's a really high risk, high reward game that we played. And I for all the crap that we've gone through in the last month and a half or so, I think that this is a welcome ray of sunshine.
Yeah. But I think, to your point, it's unlikely that we would have been able to get anything like this deal if we were negotiating on January 1st, based on what they originally tried to get Liverpool to pay, particularly for Kabak. And we'll talk more about this in future episodes, but on the Deloitte's list, one thing that is interesting is that every team's valuation has gone down significantly. So just to give you an example, last year Barcelona were first and they were over 800. They were valued at 800 million. and they are down at 7-10, I think, in the 2021 rankings. And we all know from what we've seen that, you know, they're financially not in great shape. So they may be worth that, but they've got a lot of debts, and the pandemic's not helping anyone with kind of avoiding those. So one of the quick thing on the centre backs is when do you actually see them playing? You know, because like Wednesday feels too soon, because one of them's not even in the country. Well, he hasn't even signed. I don't know. He might have done in the last 45 minutes we've been recording. So Brighton,
more hours, right?
Yeah, City. I don't think we're starting anyone new in that game. What do you think? Leicester away, Leipzig, and then Everton. That's quite a run of games.
Yeah, definitely not before City. I could see maybe one or both of them being on the bench at City. I don't know if they'll play immediately after that. I would expect, you know, if we get Kabak in, that he'll play relatively soon. But yeah, I don't know. Any of those games, maybe not. That is a tough run. So,
yeah.
Well, I think one of the questions that I asked us in our little Signal group was, what do you do with the situation with Matip? Because there was some chirps that going on that it was only 2 or 3 weeks. Like, do you bomb him straight back into the lineup, or do you try and get some of these kids the minutes that they might need? And like, again, the stakes are so high, and you have someone that's an established center back, and it's probably, when he's healthy, is one of the best center backs in the country. Like, do you say, hey, listen, son, you need to take a seat because we can't rely on you to stay healthy for 45 minutes, and we're going to give these kids the time? Or you're like, well, we kind of need the result more than we need to be able to blood these guys. My sense is that Klopp will probably, should Kabak go over the line, I think he'll give him a lot more time than we're probably would like to think is comfortable. Because he does, I think, in terms of the options that he has, he's probably the strongest, and especially against a team that likes to go over the top. So against City, you might even see, like, again, like just putting old Ben Davies in there, because if he has that makeup speed, and that's what City do rely on. They're not great in the air, but they are good in getting in behind. And so if that's the case, and we determine to play that high line, you might need someone like, if he does have the type of pace they're talking about, like a Ben Davies, that's a little bit more cerebral, of a player that has a bit more speed. I'm not Jurgen Klopp, but I think I tend to think that he might give these kids more time than we probably feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I don't see a game, and Sean, into your perspective, I don't see a game coming up where it's obvious that you could swap someone in. I mean, I think it seems reasonable to me to think that teams with kind of centre forwards who want to try and bully you, like West Ham or Burnley, I mean, I'd be perfectly comfortable with Phillips. And I think in the last couple of games, there've been a couple of I think in the West Ham game, actually, I don't know if you said this to me, Daz, but it appeared that people were trying to avoid him at the end of the second half. The ball comes in his direction, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not bothering because there's no point. It kind of felt like. So I think he'd be good against those guys. We just don't have many of those guys kind of in our near future.
Maybe against Everton. Everton, do you like to... sorry, I was just thinking out loud. Everton, with Calvert-Lewin, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, the other thing to think about, too, is that if we can get one of these guys in, maybe you play them with Henderson and put Fab at defensive midfield, and you could even play around with Fab dropping in between. You know what I mean? There's some things that they could do to try to help protect them a little bit, while also being able to get Fab back in the defensive midfield, because we have really missed that. You know, we have our back two that we've been missing, but when Fab's in defensive midfield, he also helps us, you know, first of all, break up their counterattack and to win those headers, you know, from the defensive midfield position. So, I mean, that could help kind of, I don't know, maybe it makes it a little bit more safe to play them. But I agree. I mean, definitely not against City. They're not going to play against Brighton. Maybe they get in against Leicester. I don't know. I mean, it would be a little risky to play against Leicester. But, you know, Leicester is also the type of team that like to play, and we tend to thrash those teams. You know, if most teams that come out to try to play against us and don't sit back, you know, over the last few years, they don't have a very good record against us.
Right.
City's really the only team that can compete on that level. So
it is a Vardy-less Leicester at this point. So
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's big.
I know when he's back. So just to round it out, then, got two big.
Well, before you do that, can I talk quickly on Ben Davis? Do you guys mention what I think that the Ben Davis deal, to me, kind of smacks of more of a business proposition, because if they're bandying around the idea that he's 10 to 15 million pounds in a good market, I think that might sit on him for a couple of seasons, get up his value, because they had a 20% sell-on clause that they added to that deal for him as well, which would help out Preston North End to no end, because I know that they're in kind of financial woe, they have their own financial woe. So I think that he gets the 4th/5th center back spot, and I think that Davis might get more time to kind of blood in than Kabak probably will. Again, I'm not Klopp, but I just, based on what I've seen from him before, I think that they're not going to bring some mug in for the sake of getting him just because he's £2 million.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this smacks of a good business deal, that they can potentially get 5 to 7 million more pounds than they paid for him in 2 years.
The other thing to think about too is how much is it worth for us to get Sepp going the other way on a meaningful loan, getting that good experience, because he's going to play for them, you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
He's not getting anywhere near our first team. He never has. So hopefully, he can get some meaningful playing experience and improve his value as well. I don't think he'll ever end up playing for us, but it probably improves his future value.
Yeah. So I think the net from that is we may not see much of Ben Davis, but
Maybe not.
We may see enough of him to up his value. Maybe that's it. So, but thinking about the here and now, just to round it out, 2 big games this week. Brighton, who've just beaten a very lethargic-looking Spurs for their first home win of the season, and then we play City obviously on Sunday. What are your hopes and dreams, Sean, for the upcoming week?
My hope is that we win both games, but I think I'm pretty confident against Brighton. Brighton are also the type of team that are not, even if they try to sit back, that's not really how they like to play. So they're the type of team I would think that we'd be able to handle. City's going to be a really interesting game. It's really hard for me to see how we really challenge for the title if we don't win that game, because we really need to make up ground on them. So it'll be big. I mean, I'm not optimistic about our title chances at this point, but it was pretty recently I was saying like top 4 I was worried about, and then we had the past week, and now we're looking a lot better. So this season's just been so weird how it flip-flops, and I guess you never know what can happen. But I'm pretty optimistic against Brighton. Against City, with the position our team's in now, realistically a draw wouldn't be a bad result. But we really need a win if we want to challenge for the title, I think. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of how we approach that game and who plays center back, and kind of how we match up against them. So I guess that's all I got for those two. It's an interesting run we have coming up. You highlighted it, Paul. We got Brighton, and then we got City, Leicester, RB Leipzig, and Everton. That's a tough run. So hopefully we make it through all healthy, and we have Fabinho back for City.
Yeah. So Daz, my hope, by the way, is that the front 3 plays like the front 3 have played in certainly they played at Tottenham, and the way Salah was playing yesterday. I think we have a chance if they click, because I don't know that this defense of City's has necessarily been tested. So Daz, you have the last word. Brighton, Man City. What's
I want us to beat Brighton 14-0. I'm this type of petty that I want us to beat Brighton 14-0, and the 3 goals that they get are all chalked off through VAR, the bastards.
So
look, I have a secret soft spot for Brighton. I think that they like to play football, and I think that their position in the league, I think I've said this before, I don't think it's necessarily an accurate representation of what this team, what they have, the potential that they have. But results rule the day, and they just haven't had them. I would love to thump them though, specifically to put down that marker for City, because City just came out of the same type of run of fixtures that we had when we tanked it. So, and the results, I know they just squeaked one by Sheffield United, and it was a very resolute Sheffield United performance. I watched some of it, but hopefully, Pep's not stupid. Like, he knows exactly what he's up against Klopp, and I think he's probably like, oh God, these guys are back again, and now they've brought in troops to help out. So, yeah. I think that you're going to find a little bit cagier and a more wily type of performance from Pep and his boys, specifically because it's at Anfield. I know that not having the crowd makes a huge difference, because with the, what do we have, 50,000 or so there now, egging us on, it would have been a much different proposition for them. But to Sean's point, it's a 6-pointer. If we don't, we're not out of it by a long shot. And if anything, that season's the way the season's gone so far has been proof of that. You know, the fact that Man City is now where they are, where they were in relation to where they were 5 weeks ago. I think that this is such a crazy year and such a crazy league. I think anything is possible. But yeah, it is a couple of really big matches. Brighton, don't be surprised to think they're a nimble team. So I think that they're going to give as good as they get, at least going forward. So I think that the centre-back pairing, I don't think he'll deviate from what we have right now, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It'll probably be Henderson and Phillips. And against City, I think that Klopp is going to go blood and thunder against City. I think that'll be him, his way of saying it's like, look, you guys thought that we were down and out, but we were just a slightly wounded tiger, and he'll go for the jugular. Yep. I always like the last word to be jugular, because I think that's a great way to finish off any podcast.
I wanted to add one thing about Brighton. We have, these are just random rumors. There might not be anything to them, but there have been some linking us to Bissouma when Ginny leaves. So it's just another thing to, keep an eye out for him. He's a good player. I remember when we played him earlier in the season. I really enjoyed watching him. So it's another interesting thing to kind of look at.
Well, hopefully we'll stroll through the Brighton game, and we'll be fit and firing to go for the jugular when we meet City next Sunday. And until then, last word. You left it till the very end to mention VAR. I think it is worth pointing out, if you did not see Salah's interview yesterday, that he went out of his way to tell you how much he does not like VAR. And one of the VAR goals that he was ruled out was the one against Brighton. So just, I don't know, maybe an extra incentive there. Good to see you both. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe. I'm sure you're subscribed if you're listening to the very end, but thank you for subscribing.
Thanks.